Christmas time is here finally! I love this time of year for multiple reasons, not just because it's that time when I can ask for things I don't feel like earning money for myself, but also just because of the general feel. It's nice and chilly outside, everyone always has their Christmas decorations up a week or two early for some reason, and Christmas specials. I don't know about you guys, but my family almost always watches a few Christmas specials, partially because we enjoy them, but also because it's really hard to escape them. The main two we watch are the stop-motion animated Rudolph special and the Charlie Brown Christmas. Rudolph is honestly really boring. I never got the appeal. I mean, don't get me wrong, it has a few good moments and I do like the animation style, but apart from that, I think it kinda drags on. It's certainly a product of its time. On the other side of the spectrum, I absolutely adore the Charlie Brown Christmas special. It could just be some nostalgia clouding my vision, but to this day it remains a well-paced, funny, and very enjoyable watch, in my opinion at least. I did grow up watching this special, so I have some attachment to the Peanuts series, but I'm not gonna be super defensive of it because it does have its hiccups. Now, if you don't know what Peanuts is, first of all, where have you been for the past 50 some odd years? Okay, seriously, Peanuts started off as a comic strip in the 1950s, eventually becoming a hit in the newspapers. It followed a young boy named Charlie Brown and his friends. I personally haven't read too many of the early strips, but basically everyone thinks Charlie Brown is a blockhead who can't do anything right, and most of the time they're correct. In 1965, the Coca-Cola Company commissioned a TV Christmas special based on the original comics. It was predicted to be a huge flop, but ended up being such a huge success that it's still being aired on television over 50 years later. While I don't find that I enjoy the original comic strip form of Peanuts, as I've said, I love the TV special adaptation. I'm willing to admit that the writing is a bit lacking here and there, the animation was also a bit bare bones, but despite the flaws, it still stands as my favorite classic Christmas special. You might be wondering where I'm going with my next line, but I own the special on DVD, and the DVD we got was a double feature Christmas DVD, I guess? It included the original special and another, but this other special really loses everything that gave the original its charm. It's Christmastime again, Charlie Brown. Boy, oh boy, it sure is, and I think I just stopped looking forward to Christmas all of a sudden. The special begins with Linus and Sally preparing to snowboard downhill in a box, where this joke plays out.
Kind of a steep hill, isn't it? Don't worry about it. Just lean forward and jiggle your feet. I think I've changed my mind.
This really isn't giving me a good first impression. They really try to go for a good hitting joke for the beginning a few more times with varied results. Afterwards, we cut to Charlie Brown who's selling wreaths. At one point he goes to Franklin's house and dude, did a 4-year-old voice him?
Do you know what you are doing? Don't you realize you're adding to the over-commercializing of Christmas?
I cannot take his speech about the over-commercialization of Christmas seriously whenever it sounds like the kid who voiced him doesn't even know what he's talking about. That's my first point against this special. The casting and voice acting are a bit unfitting. I don't have an issue with how they got children to voice some of, if not all of the characters, since the original Christmas special also had child voice actors, but they all sound so bored here.
Want to buy Peggy Jean those gloves for Christmas? When I first met her this summer at camp, I noticed what pretty hands she had. I want those pretty hands to be warm. But I don't have $25 to buy the gloves.
An argument could be made for the original special having a similar sound in the voices, but to me, in the original's case, it enhanced the story by making these kids and the situations feel real. It didn't feel exaggerated. Underplayed, maybe a bit, but for something that was finished in a few weeks' time, it's much better than its successor. With Christmastime Again, they're trying to be more funny and witty, cracking more jokes, and generally having a completely different tone, so the voice performances that did work in the original don't work here because there's very little emotion, which hurts a lot of the humor. Some characters have their moments, and there were 1 or 2 jokes I chuckled at, but not many of the others sat well with me. The special proceeds to jump between a bunch of subplots. This is a trope I do not understand in the media. It feels more like they were trying hard to make this fit in more with the comics. My only assumption for why it turned out this way is because the specials prior to this one were already getting worse and worse in writing, so it was only a matter of time. It's a real shame because there's a good amount of potential for ideas and concepts for more holiday specials to explore. If you want a good example, there were 2 Thanksgiving-related Peanuts specials made. One looked at how Charlie Brown celebrated the holiday with his friends, and the other took a more educational approach to show what the first Thanksgiving was like, of course with the Peanuts gang. As we all studied in our history books, Charlie Brown was at the first Thanksgiving, and anyone who tells you otherwise is a blatant liar. In comparison, It's Christmastime Again Charlie Brown feels like a rushed second attempt made only to boost ratings by mashing random ideas from executives together. Because of this, the special is so hard to talk about without it sounding as though I'm skipping a bunch of plot points. Alright, here, let's go over the next few parts, scene by scene. First, Peppermint Patty tells Marcy about how she has to do a book report. The next 2 focus on her distractions from completing said book reports. The scene to follow shows them at a play? Am I missing something here, or did they not just talk about a book report? Not only that, but in the very next scene, Peppermint Patty is writing a report about the play she saw and not the book she mentioned earlier. Maybe this was a joke about how Peppermint Patty is stupid or something, but we don't even get an explanation because it cuts to Snoopy then Sally. I think by trying to cover multiple different bases at the same time, not really building up to some plot that makes sense by the end, it messes up the pacing and kills a lot of investment that could be had here. I'm well aware that there have been examples to make this kind of writing work, but this is a very difficult thing to pull off without messing up the flow of the show. From this point on, if I kept talking about the film, I think I would just be repeating my previous points, so let's cover our other bases. The animation and art style for this special remains faithful to the originals, which I'm happy about. There are no major problems I have. The characterization is mostly the same as the others. Sally feels entitled to things she doesn't need, Peppermint Patty is scatterbrained, Snoopy is Snoopy, he walks to his own beat. Charlie Brown, on the other hand, doesn't really get a lot of Charlie Brownie moments where he screws up or gets called a blockhead or some other mishap happens revolving around him. It's mostly tame when it does happen, and I imagine this is because this special is aimed more towards children, so they naturally want it to be a tame program, whereas the original was aimed to be enjoyable by both children and adults. It's hard for me to comment on this without having some bias, but the original made the harsher outcomes for its mistakes work by having the ends justify the means. At one point in the original, Charlie Brown goes with Linus to pick out a Christmas tree for the play, and while the rest of the trees are metal, he picks the one wooden tree there is, to which the rest of the gang repeatedly mocks him for picking such a pathetic little tree. After asking Linus what Christmas is really about, he heads back home to decorate his tree with a renewed spirit. Then he once again fails by decorating it improperly, leading to the tree now drooping. So he leaves the tree behind, only for his friends to come by and fix it for him using the decorations on Snoopy's doghouse plus Linus's blanket. This is when they all realize that the tree he picked wasn't the problem, it's that they just didn't give the tree enough love or care to decorate it. That's what I mean when I say the ends justify the means. Even if what's said to them is harsh, it's that leads them to realize the tree isn't so bad after all. Overall, It's Christmastime Again Charlie Brown feels like a shadow of the original's quality. It really says a lot when the special that came around 30 years before the newer special is still regarded as a classic. While the newer one does have its fans, it's just not nearly as widely loved. It tries to go for a different approach, which I can see why it was, but as I said earlier, this special was clearly trying to be like the comic strip. That in itself isn't inherently a bad idea, however, the writing doesn't at all benefit from the change. If anything, it makes the rest of the special more confusing as a result, and is more of a collection of shorts. So that's It's Christmastime Again Charlie Brown, my least favorite Peanuts special I've seen so far. I'm getting really tired of saying the word special, so I'll just keep my outro short by ending off with by far the funniest joke.
Hockey stick!
Hockey stick?